Welcome to the Tiny Box Dialogues. This series was created to share the knowledge of our experts using real examples from real people with real stories. Welcome to Tiny Box Dialogues. Today we are speaking with Maike Müller and Sebastian Lüttringhaus. I hope I said that correctly.
Very good, yeah, I'm amazed.
About how OKRs can help us improve our business. Maike brings over 25 years of entrepreneurship experience, and now she helps companies to innovate, transform, reinvent, and crucially, get ideas off the ground and into practice. While Sebastian is joining us from Compleo, a vice president of digital sales and customer experience. He's in a high growth green tech company, very cool, providing charging solutions for electric vehicles, thereby enabling e-mobility in Europe. Now, I'm going to welcome you both officially, but we're going to dive right in because I think you have lots of insights to share. So feel free to add stories so people get to know you as we move through the conversation, okay? Let's start by defining OKRs. Very simple. We keep hearing about them. I seriously hear about them all the time. But Maike, why don't you tell our audience, why are they relevant and why are they effective?
Yeah, thank you, Raj. And thank you, Sebastian, for being here as well. Yeah, for the audience, as an information, Sebastian and I, we run a team, the OKR mini task force, one externally, that's me, and Sebastian internally. So I'm really, really happy that he is here with me. So he can report from the real inside and not only
from
me
the front lines.
The consultant, or as I love to say, the resultant from the outside in that case. Okay, yeah, objectives and key results. Why? It's an amazing tool that, though it seems so new to a lot of people, is there already for 30 years. Google was the famous company to implement it right away because one of their investors introduced it to them. And it supports the organization and their teams in managing themselves towards one common goal. And OKRs, the OK what? OKRs, they stand for objectives and key results. And this is a very simple thing to explain, but a very hard thing to implement. So it combines how to put a long-term vision, mission, and strategy into short-term operational planning. And that makes it so powerful. So what's the difference between objectives and key results? So the objective defines where you want to go, what you're trying to accomplish, and the key results measure if you're on the way to your overall goal. Are you on the right way? So you can say, we will, objective, conquer the world by, and this is measured by getting into one country after the other. So what's missing here in after the other is a measurable nominator, and that could be 10 countries in a year, 10 countries in 3 months, whatsoever. So, and why does these two things, why are they so powerful? Because they do 4 things. They lead to alignment. Mm-hmm. So to make sure that the company works on the right things. There is this saying by Peter Drucker that there's a difference between making the things right or doing the things right and doing the right things. And a lot of companies are very much engaged in doing the things right, but forgetting about, is this the right thing to do at this moment? And their OKRs are a very powerful tool approach to look at this. A second thing is it gives you accountability, because as every team is working with it, you see where you are and the others see where you are. And here we are at the third thing, that's transparency. So everyone knows or can know if they want to from everyone else in the company what they are working on. And what puts OKRs to life is not that you have them at the end, that they stand somewhere, but you constantly argue, struggle, discuss. Are we where we are, and is it the right way to get there? So you get insights and you can define challenges commonly and see how to improve it.
Fantastic. Thank you for that rundown. That's very helpful. I think what I find really interesting is having worked for a bank in Canada where their primary objective was, their question was, does this serve the customer? Now that can be defined in different ways by different areas and it can mean different things. So your KPIs could change, right? The key results could change depending on which division you're in, but you still have this core objective that you're all driving towards. So I really like that. Now, the fact is, and Sebastian, I'm really looking forward to you bringing in the business perspective of this. But first of all, I just want to say, a lot of frameworks, Maike, and tools. Why does this framework work better than most of the others that you have? I mean, only a month ago, we talked about, the design sprints, the Google design sprints. What is it about OKRs that you love? Why is it better?
It's a completely different thing compared to Google Design Sprints. Google Design Sprints are a way to kick off innovation and test things early on. And if you don't want to have Google Design Sprints as a one-time thing, you put it within a frame of OKRs, because OKRs are a way to manage goals. And probably we talk later on, we talk about how important to both, to Google Design Sprints and OKRs, how important the mindset behind is and the understanding of leadership and what kind of understanding of leadership you have.
Why do you think, so just a quick question on that, because why are Google so successful at using them, but I've heard of other organizations putting them in place? And they're not as successful. What is it that you think helps to accelerate it for Google versus other companies?
Because my assumption is they did it very well from the very beginning on. I think they implemented it already when there were 3 to 5 people, because together with the investor, they started early on and they had enough time to practice. And this is what I see also in Compleo. Why is it starting to be successful? Because there is a person, and this person is joining us here, that's Sebastian, who really, really, really stands for and making it happen within the organization. A person like me from the outside that's supporting can't do anything if there isn't anyone inside who is really, really trying to make it happen and stands for it.
It's got to be embedded into the culture. I think that's often the case, right? So you need somebody on the inside, and you're the inside man, Sebastian. So why don't we talk a little bit about an OKR in action? I'd love it if you took a bit of time and just explained, your journey into this process, because you're in the midst of this process right now, right?
Absolutely.
So please tell us a little bit about yourself and how this started.
Well, first of all, thanks for being here. Well, I'm surely I'm the one who's driving it, or who takes the responsibility inside the company to make it happen. But of course, like all the great things happening, is I'm not the only one, and I'm part of a team, and I have the full commitment of the board to do this, because that was the thing which was the prerequisite where Maike was where we started with the process. Well, the company, in what situation was the company? Actually, a year ago, or within the last year, we've tripled the organization. We've acquired 2 companies, and we're currently in the midst of integrating it. And basically what we see is, we call it a patchwork family, because it's like we need to integrate different products, totally different peoples, and form a new culture, and find our culture newly, and form a one Compleo culture. And basically,
So really
as
easy
we're
job
behind.
then, hey, Sebastian?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So that's the challenge is quite multidimensional, I would say. Growing in a completely new market, keeping pace with the competition, and under changing environments. And this is basically everything in terms of transformation you can read in textbooks. That's what I always say. Is like this is we experience this basically every day, and growing that fast in a dynamic, fast-growing market as well, which is quite new, requires that you're well aligned within the company, what you want to do and what you don't want to do. And the situation we were in, having acquired like 2 companies, having grown very, very quickly and having the need to grow further in order to become one of the most relevant players in that market, we were looking to for something to refine our strategy and then to align the whole team or the whole company into the strategy and make and show everybody what's its contribution to have the company fully aligned. And I think what this forced us to develop is to refine and develop the strategy and to break it down and ask ourselves, what do we want to do and what do we not want to do? And so that was the initial start. And the challenge was basically that we started the process where Maike helped us a lot to ask ourselves, are we really committed to that? And what are we committed to something, to leave some things behind, not to do something, and trying to focus fully? And are we committed to start this process? And we've spent a couple of hours in the management team, we're like 15 to 20 people in the extended management team, and we spend some time to define and to understand how OKRs work and to get commitment on that in that senior management level before we involved the specialists and the teams. And where we're currently
on that, Sebastian. So did you find that before you even, clearly you had to understand how the OKRs can help you?
Absolutely.
Did you find that you had to almost start a step back from that to go, it's similar to what Maike said, are we doing the right thing? Is this the purpose of the company? Are we driving the right thing forward? Was that a first step, or did you find that came as you implemented the OKR strategy?
Exactly as you were saying, or as Maike was saying, is we needed to take that step back and to ask ourselves, what do we really want to do, and to refine our strategy. So we had a process in parallel, which was our strategy process. And so, but at the end, if you would have asked people, what's the purpose and the mission of the company, they would have said, well, we're building charging stations and we want to become the leading European company. But that was all. There was more or less inspiration in it.
Not quite tangible. Not quite
exactly,
really
not
tangible.
quite tangible, too much revenue driven. And so starting this process, it forced us to ask ourselves, well, what's really the mission and what's the higher purpose and our contribution to all that thing. And after having that defined, then it was much easier for all the different business areas, from marketing, sales to services to operations, to name their contribution. And after doing that, we were able to start and define like quantitative targets, so the key results.
So when you say contribution, and maybe Maike, you can speak to this, when you say contribution, you mean the key results that they could deliver as that particular part of the company?
Yes.
Yes.
And I think what's very important, especially for a company like Compleo, which has been growing and still growing is quite fast, is that you tend to not that A doesn't know what B is doing, and sometimes A and B is doing the same, but they find out quite late. And OKRs help to make this visible and to agree on who is working on what, and not having someone in charge like the CEO who tries to find out what his company is doing and feels the need, like incentivizing his VPs to do micromanagement in order to find out what's going on. So in those fast times, you can't you can't be everywhere as a leader.
Not if you're purchasing 2 new companies and trying to integrate them, right, Sebastian? Can I ask you then, both of you, either one, both, what were some of the initial challenges? Because you're in the midst of this process right now, but what barriers did you have to overcome? Because clearly there's always a bit of fear when you're going to implement something like this, right? There's always a bit of uncertainty or barriers to growth. So what were some of the challenges that you've had to overcome or that you saw could have become problems if you hadn't dealt with them? Sebastian, why don't you share?
Yeah, maybe I start.
You nodding away, so.
Well, since the framework itself is very easy, it's really intuitive, and you say, okay, the key results are the numbers, the objectives are the inspirational part of the whole goals, and breaking the whole thing down is very easy. But the whole thing, what the biggest challenge is now is in the step we're in is the proper definition of the key results, and to figure out, spend as much time as you can on defining the key results. Well, there's plenty of abstracts you can find on the internet how to define a key result, but to ask yourself if you have a higher objective, and if you have the company key results defined, which is revenue, which is headcount, which is like inspirational numbers, which is market share, for example, things like that. So what is the contribution of the teams below this contributing to this? And asking yourself, if you want to reach a certain target, well, what's the right key result, and is it achievable? Is it ambitious enough? Is the level of ambition high enough?
Right.
And so on. So these things around defining, that's one of the biggest challenges. And the second biggest challenge after mastering the right definition is to, from our perspective, is to do the sizing and the implementation. The path of implementation. So how to scale the whole OKR organization within the organization. So now we've started within the management team, and we've started with 2 or 3 like teams, which are cross-functional by the way, and which helps them to see how other teams are involved. So we're getting out of the silos into the cross-functional collaboration, but how to scale it through the company to say how do we get from having involved now 30 people, what's the path to involve 600 or more people? And Mike and I are spending a couple of discussions around this topic, because again, the framework itself, it's easy. And in our organization, luckily, it is very easy to convince the people. They have the openness to try new things. And after explaining this framework, they immediately start seeing what the company objectives and key results are, and they are happy that they get a lot more transparency, and that it's not about just revenues and growth numbers, and that they can see their contribution, but defining the things and then scaling it in the organization. Those are, from my perspective, currently in that situation, the biggest challenges. It's not, luckily, in our situation, it's not about the acceptance. This is highly welcomed by the organization, which I'm very happy about, by the way.
I think sharing the why and sharing that accountability, transparency piece can always get a good buy-in, even in traditional organizations. Sorry, Mike, you were going to add to that?
Yeah. And I want to say some of the things I experienced in other companies, which is really great here at Compleo, is that me insisting on starting with the board, that this was welcome too, because we said we need a walk the talk. So if the board is not also in charge of his OKRs or the company OKRs, where do we take the other OKRs from? So that was really a great help. And another thing I would like to add, as I said initially, it's not so much about having OKRs written somewhere. It's the process, which is challenging, yes, but this process leads to the clearness of what everyone thinks is important, and it makes a lot of implicit assumptions explicit. And I love the example I usually use. It's when we talk about a table. you and me, we are creating a table. You do the one half, I do the other half. And then after a week, we come back to combine those pieces. You have done half a round table and I've done it with edges, but we've talked about a table. It was so clear. And this is what usually happens in companies, that especially the managers say, but I've told them, it was so clear. Why didn't they do this? So, and given also the rhythm of OKRs, the meeting rhythms of the check-in, those make sure that you're constantly talking to each other, and your agenda are your current OKRs for the quarter.
I think they call that table modern design, very abstract, so not so shabby either. We learn from each other. But I do want to talk, sorry, I shouldn't make jokes about it, but it is kind of cool. Great example. Thank you, Maike. I do want to talk about this impact on employees, because you've already alluded to it, Sebastian. And Maike, you talk about how OKRs are super impactful to employees. Can you expand on that a little bit? And then I'd like to come back to you, Sebastian, and get initial sense that you're getting from the employees at Compleo. So Maike, why don't you start with what you were describing to me about why this is so crucial for employees?
Yeah, because it has a little bit to do also with the mindset. And I follow the mindset that people have an intrinsic motivation if you give them the room for showing an experience that they can benefit to what they are working on, or better said, they can benefit to the overall goal of a company and put their strength into it. And in order to see if you can benefit, especially when a company gets bigger and bigger, it's so important to have something in place that automatically leads to transparency and acknowledgement of what people contribute. And it's, I very much believe in that in those dynamic times, you need self-organized teams, and that this shouldn't lead to chaos, which it usually does not. And with the OKRs, you have like a net that combines every team's approaches and achievements to the overall strategy, and makes transparent what everyone is working on. And that's great. We all want to be part of something, and we want to see what we can add and what we add.
And we hear that a lot more these days, that people want purpose, that they're looking for organizations that are leading to something. So Sebastian, I mean, you are working in an organization that is actually for societal good in terms of its electric and its green tech. So employees must endemically feel like this is a great, purposeful company. But what have you seen as it from the employees in terms of implementing these OKRs?
Really, it's about learning to focus on their contribution and what things to do, because the high growth pace we have in the company compared with the overall situation of the company, nevertheless is 10 years old, but still is in a large transformation on the digital side, on the processes side. The organization changes, there's coming new people in. Helps or shows them that in their everyday challenges, there's so many processes new or not defined, or like in transition again, and so people have a magnitude of things they need to do. Sometimes it becomes inefficient because they have a lot of interfaces waiting for other things. People have a lot of tasks, and what this helps is that they can ask themselves is, am I contributing with everything I think I need to do? Am I contributing to my OKRs and am I progressing from one week to the next? So we have a weekly rhythm. We get together at least once a week, do a check-in, and everybody reports a small progress or does not. And they see immediately that and they are allowed, or they feel that it makes sense to ask themselves, the things I'm doing, I have a full agenda, I think I need to do a lot of things, but to ask themselves, are they contributing to their objectives and key results, or is it something which keeps them busy? And so now they're getting even more aware about this, and they're getting more let's say they take more the responsibility for their things, because like from the leadership team, we think we have a lot of new ideas every day, and it's not, we don't have a lack of ideas, and we always have smart people to drop the ideas. And I told my teams, or I told the teams, we have to come to that point that they ask me, how does it contribute to my OKRs, or do we really need to do it? And so they start doing this because they can clearly show it contributes or it does not. And so that's what keeps the focus at the end.
What I love about that is that accountability goes both ways, my friend.
It goes absolutely both ways. Yeah.
Maike, you wanted to add to that?
Yeah. I think we come to that the team and the employees are now responsible for results and not for tasks.
Yeah.
So it's outcome before output. Mm-hmm. And so this is a good protection against an aspirin against micromanagement, so to say.
I love that. I've never been a fan of micromanagement, so I love that. Autonomy is fantastic. I do want to ask you, Maike, for the audience and anybody who's listening after the recording, what if they're thinking about implementing OKRs? Can you just give them 3 steps to think of before you implement? Because I think often people go straight to the key results that they want, and then they're like, here they are. Yeah. Go for it.
So first of all, you should have your vision, mission, and strategy in place, which also should be not only a top-down, but also bottom-up approach, which, by the way, we didn't mention this, probably it was implicit, it goes both ways with the OKRs. So that's very important. Secondly, highly recommend the buy-in of the top management. And I recommend to start with yearly OKRs for the company by the top management. And then it's fun to see if the levels underneath see the same objectives and key results. So they shouldn't be put top down, but at least they should do theirs. The others should do theirs, and then you and the discussion, so we had it at Compleo as well, is very beneficial to see where is there the same idea of the table and where it's not. So that's one thing. And then being patient, because it's learning a new muscle. Yeah, I mean, learning a new, it's activating a muscle that hasn't been activated in a lot of companies. So patience and not getting back to what we know, which didn't work that well, but we knew it at least, or we know how it works. So being open to that change, and then it's very, very, very powerful from my point of view. But it's not easy. It's like if you want to run for a marathon, you can't do it from one day to another. You have to practice.
I would go as simple as learning to lift with my knees instead of my back is still something I default to the back with. And the older I get, I'm like, oh yeah, that's not sustainable. Same thing as business. You can't keep doing what you did before if it's not sustainable, right? Yeah. So that's, I'd love to give you a minute to just give a final takeaway from your side, and then I'll wrap this up.
Yes, perfect. So yeah, basically look at the things. If you want to implement it, get some person like we have Maike, get some person from the outside who guides you and helps you in challenges. If you have everything in place, and makes sure that you have the commitment on the board and in the management team. Get that support, because that helps you to get on track, and it prevents you to being over ambitioned, and then quite quickly try to involve the key players in the organization, because we figured out we had some people who were ambitious, who are quite smart, who've worked with that, or who've got a training already, and try to get those people involved as well, because they're going to be ambassadors and then figure out, point 3, figure out how many levels you really need to reduce complexity, and be clear about your goals or your objectives.
I love the ambassadors because that also entitles accountability. So that's fantastic. So there
Absolutely.
you have it. Remember, with OKRs, it's about alignment, accountability, transparency, and insight. And it goes both ways. So you better be prepared for the cultural shift that's going to take place. Thanks very much for joining us. This audio will be shared on Spotify. The video will be shared on YouTube. And information on where to find these two great speakers will be beneath both. Thanks so much for joining. And thank you, Sebastian. Thank you, Maike.
Thank you, Raj. Very nice. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Maike, thank you.